Hey folks, Mr. Bob here. Tonight I'm taking you back to the age when television meant something. Back when living rooms glowed with warm lamps, when families gathered around a single screen, and when one man, Bob Hope, could make the entire country laugh in the same moment. If you lived through those years, you didn't just watch entertainment, you lived inside it. So sit back, relax, and let's take a trip to the Bob Hope era, a time of simpler joys, familiar voices, and stories that were never told on television. Because tonight, we're going behind the curtain. There was something magical, genuinely magical, about America in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. A magic that doesn't exist anymore. A magic we're trying to bring back tonight. Let's take a slow walk through that time. Not fast, not rushed. We've got 30 whole minutes. So let's live in the moment. Imagine this. The year is 1958. A warm summer evening. Streetlights flickering along quiet suburban roads. Kids finishing their last game of tag, breathless and laughing, dirt on their elbows, grass stains on their socks. The sun has dipped behind the rooftops, and the sky glows with a soft purple haze. Crickets chirp. Fireflies blink across backyards. Sprinklers hiss in the distance. Inside the house, a fan hums gently. Curtains sway. Mom folds clean laundry on the couch. Dad flips through the evening paper, glasses sliding down his nose. Kids run around the living room, jumping from rug to rug, pretending the floor is lava, and in the middle of this warm chaos sits the television, a heavy wooden box with rounded glass edges and dials that click like tiny metal hearts. Neighbors used to say, "When that TV turns on, you know the world disappears for half an hour." And they were right, because on nights when Bob Hope was on the air, everything else stopped. Now picture the city, downtown, 1950s hustle, men in fedoras and long coats, hurrying across crosswalks, women carrying brown paper grocery bags, with fresh bread poking from the top, newspaper boys shouting headlines, taxi engines growling, shop windows glowing with neon signs, open late, milkshakes 20 cents, color TV coming soon, and tucked between all this motion was the NBC studio, the birthplace of laughter. People lined up outside hours early just to see a taping. It wasn't just entertainment. It was an event, the highlight of their week, a memory they'd talk about for years. Walk through those studio doors with me, slowly. Feel the rush of cool air conditioning, mixed with the heat from studio lights. Hear the sharp click-clack of shoes on polished concrete floors, crew members rushing around, holding clipboards, props, cables, costumes, the building beating like a living organism. The studio had a smell, and if you were there, you never forgot it. Warm cables, freshly painted wood, coffee cups half empty on the control table, old curtains that had held applause for decades, a hint of cigarette smoke from someone who snuck a puff outside stage left. Listen, the hum of the stage lights, like bees in a distant hive, the creak of wooden bleachers as audience members take their seats, the faint echo of laughter warming up the room before the show even starts. A man with a clipboard shouts, "2 minutes to curtain! Camera 3 ready! House lights to 30%! Quiet on set!" The audience leans forward. The orchestra tunes their instruments. A trumpet plays a quick warm-up note. Someone coughs nervously, and then the curtain trembles. The room holds its breath. The announcer smiles and steps forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Mr. Bob Hope." The crowd erupts. Applause crashes like ocean waves. A sea of smiles, a wave of warmth, and Bob walks out with that signature stride, half confident, half mischievous, all heart. He always held the microphone like an old friend, leaning into the camera with a grin that said, "Don't worry, folks. We're going to have a good time tonight." His jokes didn't rely on shock or noise or cheap tricks. They were simple, smart, timed perfectly. A raised eyebrow, a pause, a glance into the audience, and the entire room would fall apart laughing. Kids at home didn't always understand the jokes, but they laughed anyway, because mom and dad were laughing, and laughter in those years was contagious. Not internet contagious, human contagious, the kind you felt in your chest. Families across the country had rituals on Bob Hope nights. Some ordered pizza. Some made popcorn on the stove, shaking the pot until kernels exploded like fireworks. Some made hot cocoa. Some put blankets on the floor and made a TV fort. One family in Ohio turned off every light in the house except the television said it made the show feel like a movie theater. Another family in Texas invited neighbors over and fit 12 people into a living room meant for 5. Someone in California put aluminum foil on their antenna, trying to get rid of that flickering diagonal line. That always appeared during the best joke. And somewhere out there, a teenager had their first crush on a girl who laughed at a Bob Hope punchline. These weren't just shows. These were memories across millions of homes, across thousands of towns, across decades. Bob Hope didn't just entertain America, he united it across generations, across beliefs, across distances. When he walked on stage, America leaned in, and in those moments, those warm, bright, simple moments, life felt just a little easier, just a little lighter, just a little better. That was the Bob Hope era, a time of togetherness, a time of shared laughter, a time we're bringing back tonight. But the real stories, the ones nobody saw, the ones that made the Bob Hope era human, those were backstage. A TV studio looks calm on camera, smooth, controlled, organized. But behind the curtain, it was a circus. A beautiful, hilarious, unforgettable circus. Let's step into it slowly, carefully, and let the memories unfold. The backstage door creaks open. A rush of warm air hits your face. The smell of old curtains, cables, sweat, and coffee that had been reheated. One too many times. You hear everything at once. A typewriter clacking in the writer's room. Costume racks screeching across the floor. Crew members shouting instructions. A prop falling somewhere with a loud clang. Someone laughing, someone panicking, someone running. Then Sam, ah yes, Sam the stagehand, a man with the heart of a lion and the memory of a goldfish. He forgot everything: microphones, cue cards, props, sometimes even why he walked into a room. Once, 10 minutes before a live broadcast, Sam lost the main microphone. Not a backup, not a spare. The microphone. Bob Hope looked him straight in the face and said, "Sam, if you lose one more microphone, you'll have to do the monologue for me." Sam froze like a statue. Didn't blink, didn't breathe. The crew erupted in laughter. Even Bob couldn't hold a straight face. And the best part? Sam hadn't lost the microphone. It was in his hand the entire time. Then there was Mary, the wardrobe lady, small, sweet, always smiling, but one of the most chaos-creating humans in the entire building. Mary had a talent. She could iron clothes perfectly, but she could also mix up outfits like it was an Olympic sport. One night, she handed Bob Hope a suit 2 sizes too big. He put it on, looked like he was drowning inside a wool ocean, and whispered, "Mary, am I hosting a show or joining the circus?" But instead of fixing it, Mary started laughing. Then Bob laughed. Then the crew laughed. Bob walked on stage anyway, sleeves hanging past his hands, and joked, "I asked for room to breathe, but Mary must think I'm sharing the suit with 3 other guys." The crowd exploded. Mary nearly fainted from laughing so hard. And then Hank, old Hank, the microphone repairman, a man who believed tape could fix anything: microphones, cables, chairs, broken hearts. Maybe. One Christmas special, right in the middle of rehearsals, the microphone sparked. A little puff of smoke rose from it. Someone screamed. Someone fainted. Someone prayed. Hank walked up calmly, blew on it like he was extinguishing a candle, tapped it twice, and said, "Try it now." It worked. Bob looked at him and said, "Well, folks, either I tell better jokes or this mic has had enough of me tonight." The studio roared with laughter. But the backstage memories weren't always accidents. Sometimes they were expertly crafted chaos, because the Bob Hope crew was a family, and families pull pranks, big pranks. One time the writers replaced Bob's cue cards with blank sheets of paper just seconds before going live. Bob walked out, looked down, and saw nothing. He looked at the audience, looked back at the card, and said, "Well, folks, tonight's joke is brought to you by my writers dash dash." Or at least it would be. If they had written anything. The audience howled. The writers nearly passed out laughing. Another day, a raccoon wandered onto the set during rehearsal. No one knew how it got in. No one knew how to get it out. It climbed a camera. It stole a donut. It hissed at Sam. It knocked over a chair. Bob walked in, stared at the raccoon, and said, "Well, if he knows my lines, put him in the show." The raccoon became an unofficial mascot for 3 weeks. Backstage wasn't just chaos, though. It was a heartbeat, a pulse, a secret world that made the show possible. There were quiet moments, too. Writers huddled around a table, erasing and rewriting jokes until sunrise. Bob practicing a line in front of a mirror, trying different pauses and eyebrow raises. A stagehand gently dusting off a microphone as if preparing a sacred object. The piano player warming up with soft jazz notes. A makeup artist humming while fixing a smudge under Bob's eye. An old clock ticking in the hallway, counting down the minutes to airtime. The soft murmur of the audience flowing through the walls. All these tiny, unseen moments created the world America loved. Because the truth is, the Bob Hope era wasn't built on jokes. It was built on people. People who messed up. People who worked hard. People who cared. People who loved the show as much as the audience did. And backstage, in the laughter, the chaos, the mistakes, the friendships, the long nights, lived the real soul of the Bob Hope era. And now that we've stepped behind the curtain, it's time to follow Bob into one night he never forgot. A night stranger than fiction. A night funny, eerie, cinematic. A night that became memory number 25, the Palm Springs night. But there was one night, one strange night, that Bob Hope never forgot. Not because it was scary, not because it was funny, but because it was both. The kind of story only life itself could create. Let's walk into that night, slowly, moment by moment. Because this isn't just a memory, it's a movie. It was early summer. Los Angeles was glowing with late evening light, that golden haze the city gets right before nightfall. Palm trees swayed like lazy dancers. Windows reflected the sunset like sheets of fire. Bob stepped outside the studio after a long week of rehearsals. He loosened his tie, took a deep breath of warm California air, and smiled. Palm Springs was calling, his place of peace, a town where time moved slower, where the stars shone brighter, and where he could walk the streets without being Bob Hope, the entertainer, but simply Bob. He climbed into his classic blue Cadillac. The leather seats were warm, smelling of sun and cologne. The dashboard lights glowed soft orange. He turned on the radio. Smooth jazz spilled out like honey, steady and calm. He pulled onto the highway, the city slowly shrinking behind him. The desert waited. So, the first hour was perfect. The sky turned from gold to violet. Distant mountains faded into deep blue silhouettes. Heat rose from the road in soft waves. The hum of the engine settled into a steady rhythm. Bob's mind drifted. He thought about upcoming shows, about jokes he wanted to refine, about memories from his early days, about life. He smiled. Then the radio crackled, a soft hiss, barely noticeable at first, like someone whispering far away. Bob tapped the radio. The hiss grew louder. He adjusted the dial. Static swallowed the music entirely, a harsh, living noise that rose and fell like a creature breathing. Bob frowned. Well, either aliens are trying to call me, or this thing needs a vacation too. He chuckled at his own joke. Then it happened. The engine coughed. Once, twice, a deep metallic gasp, then silence. The car rolled to a stop on a long, empty stretch of desert road. No cars, no lights, no sound, only the wind. Bob stepped out. The desert air had changed. Colder than it should have been. The kind of cold that makes you feel like you're not supposed to be there. He looked around. Miles of road, miles of sand, a lonely telephone pole leaning off to the side. Then, lights, far in the distance, small flickering dots, moving strangely across the horizon. Too low to be headlights, too bright to be flashlights. They shifted in ways that made no sense, zigzagging, stopping, rising gently, then fading out like fireflies that lost their spark. Bob squinted. Well, if that's a welcoming committee, they need to work on their timing. He tightened his coat and began walking. Desert nights are strange. Hot air suddenly turns cold. Sound disappears. The stars burn too brightly, as if they're watching. As Bob walked, the sand crunched under his feet. His shadow stretched long behind him, thin and sharp under the moonlight. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. Finally, a shape appeared out of the darkness. A motel, old, lonely, barely standing. Its neon sign flickered violently. The Desert Echo Motel. One letter shorted out every few seconds, making the sign read DESRTECHMTL. Bob let out a breath. Well, if this place has room service, I'll eat my hat. He pushed the door open. Inside, the lobby felt frozen in time. Wallpaper peeling, old postcards pinned to a dusty corkboard. A fan turning so slowly, it barely moved the air. Behind the front desk sat a man, still as a mannequin, eyes locked on an old radio. He didn't blink. Bob cleared his throat. Evening, my car quit on me. The man nodded, once slowly. Silence. Bob glanced at the guest book. Thick, yellowed pages. Dates from decades ago. Names crossed out in shaky handwriting. He picked up the pen. It didn't work. Before he could ask, the man handed him another pen, already uncapped, waiting. Bob hesitated, almost like the man knew he needed it. He signed. The man took the book back, without a word, and handed Bob an old metal key, room 7. The hallway upstairs smelled like dust, moist carpet and cigarette smoke long ago. Bob's footsteps echoed too loudly, as if the hallway were empty, for many, many years. He reached room 7. The door was slightly open. Inside, a single lamp flickered weakly. The bed was perfectly made, uncomfortably perfect. Old Hollywood posters hung crooked on the wall. He sat down. The lamp buzzed. Then the power died. Darkness swallowed everything. Bob froze, and no sound, no light, just the pounding of his own heartbeat. Then, footsteps, slow, measured, approaching his door. He held his breath. The doorknob twitched, then a whisper. "Bob!" A cold shiver crawled down his spine, the kind of chill that hits you when you know you're not alone. Shadows moved under the door, like someone shifting their weight. Back and forth. Bob stepped backward quietly, hands shaking, just as he reached for the lamp. Power surged back. The lamp flashed on. The radio on the dresser blasted static. Footsteps stopped. Silence, total, absolute silence. Morning came slowly. Sunlight leaked through the curtains, like a gentle rescue. Bob gathered his things and left quickly. He stepped into the lobby. Empty. The man behind the counter, gone. Radio, gone. Guest book, gone. No trace of anyone ever being there. Bob's car sat outside, untouched, working perfectly. He got in and drove away, as fast as the road allowed. For the rest of the drive, he kept looking into the rearview mirror, expecting to see someone behind him. He saw nothing. He returned to Los Angeles, still shaken, still confused, still replaying every moment. But when he walked into the studio, the entire crew burst into laughter. Sam jumped out holding a giant sign. "Welcome to your surprise rehearsal." Mary nearly collapsed from laughing. Hank wiped tears from his eyes. Bob stood frozen. Then Sam explained. "The motel, a fake set built by the crew in the desert. The whisper, Mary hiding behind the door. The footsteps, Hank banging metal pipes underneath the floor. The silent clerk, the prop guy in makeup, the lights, a generator controlled from behind the set. They filmed the entire thing for a secret comedy special. That never aired. Bob laughed so hard, he had to sit down. It became one of his favorite memories. A prank only his closest friends knew, and one he told, only to the people he trusted the most. That was the Palm Springs night. A story strange enough to be real, funny enough to be unforgettable, and human enough to belong in the heart of the Bob Hope era. Those days, those warm, bright, simple days, may be gone, but the memories, oh, the memories, those never fade. Not really. They stay softly, quietly, tucked away in the corners of our hearts, where time moves slower and everything still feels familiar. If you grew up during the Bob Hope era, then you lived through something special, something rare, something America hasn't had again. A time when entertainment had heart, when families gathered around a single screen not because they had nothing else to do, but because they wanted to be together. A time when the living room was the center of the home, when laughter didn't come from a phone, or a pair of headphones, or a lonely screen late at night, but from people sitting side by side, feeling the same joy at the same time. And in those moments, every Thursday night, every holiday special, every USO broadcast Bob Hope had a gift. He made the country feel smaller, made the world feel closer, made problems feel lighter, if only for a moment. Let's take one last slow walk back through that world. Imagine the glow of a 1960s television, soft, warm, flickering like a tiny fireplace. Imagine Dad leaning forward in his chair, laughing at a joke before the punchline even lands. Imagine Mom smiling, stirring her coffee during the commercial break. Imagine the kids curled up under blankets, fighting sleep just to stay awake for one more joke. Imagine the sound of applause, filling the room like the house itself was clapping. Imagine an America where neighbors actually knew each other, where front porches were gathering places, where kids rode bikes until sunset and parents never worried. As long as the streetlights were on, imagine a world where laughter was the great equalizer. That was the Bob Hope era. Bob always said comedy wasn't about being funny. It was about being human. It was about timing, rhythm, connection. It was about looking someone in the eyes when letting them know they weren't alone. That's why his jokes worked, because beneath every punchline was warmth, respect, a small truth that everyone recognized. When Bob Hope spoke, America listened, not because he was a star, but because he felt like family. And now, after all the memories, the backstage chaos, the studio magic, the long nights of rehearsal, the Palm Springs prank that became legend, we arrive at the final memory, not a joke, not a story, not a moment on stage, but something softer, quieter, more honest. The memory of what those days meant, the memory of a country that found comfort in a single voice, the memory of millions of people who laughed together, cried together, hoped together, the memory of an era that shaped generations. Those nights weren't just entertainment, they were family gatherings. They were breathers during hard times. They were anchors in uncertain decades. And even though time moves on, and the world changes, and screens get smaller, while life gets louder, the memories remain warm, bright, unshakable. Tonight, we didn't just remember Bob Hope, we remembered ourselves. We remembered the America we used to be. Slower, kinder, closer. We remembered the laughter we shared, the homes we grew up in, the nights we never realized would become memories. We remembered what it felt like when the world paused and joy filled the room. And now, as our journey comes to a close, thank you. Thank you for taking this trip with me, for sitting in the glow of old television light, for listening to the stories that live behind the curtain, for remembering. Because memories, real memories, are the one thing time can never take away. Until next time, I'll see you in the next memory. Tonight, we didn't just remember Bob Hope, we remembered ourselves in the America we once were. And now, as the lights dim and the curtain slowly falls, thank you for taking this journey with me, for the laughter, for the memories, for the warm, quiet moments. And until next time, I'll see you in the next memory.